All right, good morning. I've missed you all, right? It's nice to see your faces, right? Like, I know it wasn't fun to wake up this morning after spring break. My kids were really angry today. Like, they did not want to get up. They didn't want to go to school. I'm like, but it's Monday, you have to, right? And it's been what, like 2 weeks or something since I've seen you all. Did everyone have a good spring break? Anyone want to share fun things that you did? Like anything fun? Yeah. Nice. That's fun. Hopefully there was some good food in there. Yeah, it sounds good right now. I'm like, let's go. It's almost lunch, right? Fun. Anybody else? Other stuff? Anybody else? Go anywhere? Do anything yet? Oh, fun. Was there a lot of snow? There. Right. A little blizzard is fun. Too much. Yeah. That sounds like fun. Anybody else? It was fun, except it was cold. So our cruise was obviously amazing. I'm really proud of myself. This took some effort. I managed to eat a croissant for everyone in my fifth class. It was 36 croissants, by the way. I think I deserve to be little for it. Very little, like this day, right? But still, 36. The last day I had to eat 9 milk because I was desperately behind. And then for all of you, I ate 1 cookie for each one of you. Each of the 32 of you, I had 32 cookies. I gained a respectable like 4.5 pounds. I was shooting for like 7, 1 for each day, but 4.5, not bad, right? The food surprisingly wasn't as good on this trip. I mean, I ate it anyway, but it wasn't as amazing as the last time. And it was cold, but I kissed a seal on my trip. That's probably the most memorable thing, or was kissed by a seal. I don't know. We did this excursion, and it wasn't my choice, it was my kids. It was sea lion playtime and kiss. It was like 20 minutes in the water with a seal. And I can't remember if her name was Cassandra or Samantha. I can't remember, like I keep racking my brain. They wouldn't let you take pictures. But this seal, I got like a big old sloppy kiss from the seal with a cheek, and it was memorable. My mother-in-law went in like open mouth on this seal. Like I was like, what are you doing? Fish all over her face. It was very memorable. I wrote a seal. No, I rode a horse on the beach, which was kind of fun. I had never ridden a horse before, so that was kind of cool. And rode a banana boat in the water with my kids. It was just the like 4 of us, and we almost all flew off of it. And it was like, how am I going to rescue all 3 of them? But it was a lot of fun. I ate a lot, and I kissed a seal, which was beautiful. So random things. And again, I ate a cookie for each one of you. I tried to eat a piece of cake for each one of you, but I tapped out at like 12, which was a lot of pieces of cake, right? But 12. I think it's more than a whole cake. I want to say I ate like a cake and then some. I was pretty proud of that. And I can put away cake, but it was a lot of fun. It was hard to come back from, like, eat regularly. We went out to dinner and my kids were like, I'd like to order 2 appetizers. I'm like, no, that's only on the cruise ships. So really, 2 appetizers, 2 dinner, 2 whatever. Though I do feel like I'm fighting a bit of a cold, so forgive me. I'll try and stay back a little bit. But it was crowded, 5,000 people on that ship, and you could feel it. Like it was just people everywhere. Like when we got off, I was like, oh, I'm so glad to be away from all these people. Yeah. We went from Long Beach to Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, and Pop. And it was 7. Cookies spread out over 7. I'm already planning. We have one planned we have one in November. It's like 200 and something days away. I had to start a new countdown timer, right? For that one. I got to start warming up for that one. My daughter Paisley normally eats so many croissants. I was sharing with my first class today. Last cruise, she ate 50 croissants, like put me in the dust, 50 croissants. It's like a weird competition we have. And she wasn't feeling good this time, so she only ate like 20. And so I like was falling behind. So 9 on the last day. That last breakfast was painful, but I managed. Anyway, it's nice, as I said, to see you all. We're in the last little chunk of our class now, which is kind of crazy. If you're looking at the syllabus, we start our last like third of the semester. It's basically like a month from today that we're done, right? So we really don't have that much left, which is exciting, but also a little sad. Yeah.
When's the second homework assignment?
Yeah. So the second homework assignment is due on the 17th. So you still have, what is a week from Wednesday. So definitely something to start thinking about. A couple of you have already turned it in, which is really early, but it's due a week from Wednesday, and you're just picking another option off that menu. Right. So in this last unit, we're going to look at contraception and abortion today. Then we'll talk about pregnancy and birth. We have a guest speaker coming in to talk about STIs next week. Varieties of sexual expression, power and sexual coercion, and then like sex for sale. So those are the topics that we have left. We have one more exam to go, and then one more homework assignment, and a couple of participations. So we only have like a month left together, but a good month. We'll enjoy it, right? We have lots of fun topics to talk about in that time. And I do have some statistics just to share with you. I was trying to remember to do this. Exam number 2, which kind of feels like a long time ago at this point. So for our class, the high score was 100. The low was a 69. The average was 91, and it took 57 minutes on average for people to take. So a lot of really solid, good scores. I mean, even the lowest score wasn't very low. So most of you should be in a really beautiful spot. But as we go into this last third, you can kind of start looking at your points on Canvas, see what your grade is, what you need to get, or what you need to do moving forward to either maintain or try and move a little bit. But I wanted to make sure I shared that with you before I forgot. And then, yeah, the homework assignment, as you asked about, is due coming up, and then the last exam and so on. Hard to believe that's all we have left, right? Like a month. I get sentimental toward the end, just as a warning. Some of you know this about me because you've had classes with me before, but I get sentimental at the end. I get sad. But this is what we'll look at today. I always kind of teach this one a little bit differently. I'll kind of introduce it, and then we're going to do a little group activity related to different birth control methods. But any questions about anything else before we jump into this, about the schedule, stuff coming up, how many croissants I ate, any of that stuff? I missed the cruise. If I could go back now, I would. I got an offer that said like back on board. You can go back next week. And I looked at my partner. I'm like, let's go. I tried, but anyway, what we'll look at here, chapter 13. I like to cover this one before we talk about pregnancy and birth. So I'm going a little out of order, but we'll look at some kind of perspectives, some ideas about sharing and choosing a birth control method. And then the rest is about the different types of birth control methods or contraception methods we can use. So setting the stage a little bit, contraception and birth control are essentially referring to the same thing. We tend to use them kind of interchangeably. It's preventing pregnancy. So more than worrying about preventing STIs, though some of these do obviously prevent sexually transmitted infections as well. What we're traditionally using these methods for is to prevent getting pregnant, right? And you can do this through abstinence or use of devices or procedures or different methods. There's a lot of different methods that we'll talk about. Contraception and evidence of it has been around for a really long time, right? As long as we have like documented history, we have like back in ancient Greek cultures, they used magic and superstition to try and prevent pregnancy from happening. The ancient Egyptians would fumigate a man's penis with like a certain mixture of like oils and smokes to try and make him less potent so that women wouldn't get pregnant or would get pregnant, depending on their goal. Seed pods, grass plugs, and empty pomegranate halves were inserted up into the vagina to block sperm. Right? People have used a lot of different methods over time. We have some much newer and better ones than all of those. And the condom used to be made out of sheep intestines. And that was something that was really commonly used as well. Frightening to think about, but very common for a lot of years. So we have evidence of this being around for a long time. And as long as it's been around, it's been controversial. Right? There's a lot of legislation and controversy around like birth control and contraception, even now, right? This was huge last year in the news and the year before. A lot of things related to abortion and Roe versus Wade, to the availability of these different, things that we're going to talk about. In the 1870s, we had somebody named Anthony Comstock who played a really big role in trying to eliminate birth control. He thought it was obscene to talk about sex and preventing pregnancy and things like that. And then we had two people who really fought very hard to make birth control available, especially for women. Margaret Sanger and Catherine McCormick. Right? So we kind of have this back and forth throughout history of trying to make it very available to give people options and freedom while also fighting it. And that's something that continues today. The Supreme Court, like, is still there's so many battles of this going on even right now, especially as it relates to like female reproductive rights around things like abortion and birth control and so on. So just again, kind of know this has been controversial, but it's been around for a very long time. Again, right, a huge increase in the amount of contraceptives and birth controls used in our country, right? If you go back to the 1960s, it was estimated that like 10% of couples use some form of birth control, and now it's closer to like 60 to 65% of couples. Very common that, especially in heterosexual relationships, that one or both partners is using some form of birth control method. Might be a combination of methods. That's very common as well. Desirable for a lot of reasons, right? The reason that McCormick and Sanger and a lot of others have fought for these rights for people is not having to worry about getting pregnant can allow you to maybe enjoy intimacy without that fear if you're not at that point in your life. Reducing unwanted pregnancies, reducing abortions, helping to alleviate overpopulation, giving women access to higher levels of education and economic opportunity. It used to be that a lot of women got pregnant very, very young, and that restricted their ability to go to college and maybe pursue their careers, right? And so it was the case that back in like the 50s and 60s, there was a huge push for birth control to become available to try and, like promote some of these things that are right here. And again, as I mentioned, it's been kind of controversial, especially among religious groups, right? Religion and sex have always kind of butted heads a little bit. Especially when it's not for procreation, when it's not for the purposes of having children. We see a lot of like backlash from religious beliefs and like institutions and political ones now as well. So very complicated, but obviously some advantages to birth control as well. When it comes to picking a birth control method and deciding on a birth control method, there's a couple of things to kind of consider. Again, there are a ton of different methods. That's what we'll focus mainly on today. But when you're deciding about using or not using contraception, this really should be something that is done with the person that you're engaging in sex with, right? In an ideal world, right? It should be something that you talk about before, that you share expenses with, and that you consider like all of your options together. There's a movie called Knocked Up. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's a comedy, probably not the best movie. There's some funny parts in it, some great examples of pregnancy stuff as we get into the next chapter. But there's a scene where they're both like drunk and engaging in sex, and they're trying to have this conversation about using condoms in the heat of the moment while both drunk, right? That's not the time to do it. In an ideal world, you have that conversation ahead of time. I have that clip, I'll play it for you. But you can see the miscommunication that happens between them. This really should be something that you talk about ahead of time, right? Like, are we going to use any kind of protection? Am I, are we both? And so on. So let me play that for you. I think it's a great example of like a very classic miscommunication, their pregnancy and birth and so on, right? But you don't want to be making those decisions in the moment. Let's just do it already. He's like, okay, and drops the condom on the floor and they have sex, right? So, and she gets pregnant from that. So obviously, again, this should be something that ideally you have a conversation about ahead of time, right? And really like look at your options, right? Now, very few people are going to like attend a clinic or a class or anything, but maybe you look it up and you read about it. Like, what are the failure rates? What's the cost, right? Are you going to share expenses? Are you going to use something? Am I going to use something? Really important when you're making decisions about contraception, you have to know a couple of things in order to make like a sound choice. And one of them is to really like, and I have it down here, is to know yourself, right? As you think about birth control methods, some of them have really intense like rules for them, let me say, in order for them to be effective. So if you're somebody who's not great at remembering to take a pill at the same day every time, maybe birth control pills aren't the best for you. If you don't take them at relatively the same day time every day, they're not going to work, right? Or not going to work as effectively. And so if you know that about yourself, maybe that's not great. Or if you're not comfortable touching yourself, maybe using something like a NuvaRing that you have to insert into your body on your own and remove from your body on your own might not be something that you're comfortable with either, right? So kind of knowing what your comfort is is really important. It's also important to remember that other than abstinence, there is not currently an ideal method that is 100% effective, completely safe, with no side effects, reversible, separate from sexual activity, inexpensive, easy to obtain, usable by either sex, or dependent on the user's memory. Right? So there are a lot of like costs and benefits and disadvantages to every method. And it's important to you like to consider, is it easy to use? Is it easy to obtain? What is the like failure rate? Every single item that we're going to talk about has a failure rate to it. How many times out of 100, if used properly, it won't work, right? And things like condoms and so on are very low as long as they're used properly. Human error is the #1 reason why a lot of these things fail. Not using them properly. There are like 7 steps that you have to do in order to put on a condom, right? Like 7 steps you're supposed to follow. And our speaker will talk a little bit more about that, so I don't want to ruin it. But really important to know how to use these things properly. And I have one more clip to kind of show you with that. But it's very common because of human error that people use backup methods. So maybe like in a traditional heterosexual relationship, the woman is on a birth control pill and the man uses a condom, right? That might be one way that you could use 2 methods together. Not uncommon for people to use like a backup method to help prevent that. But great example of human error, seeing 40-year-old virgin. I showed you a clip of it earlier, but he doesn't know how to use condoms, right? And again, in the moment is probably not the time to figure it out. But I will show the error piece, right? And if you don't know what you're doing or don't know how to use one of these products properly, then they oftentimes, their failure rate is going to be exponentially higher. So in addition to kind of knowing yourself and knowing your partner and maybe having those conversations with a partner, especially if you're in like a committed relationship with them, it's also important to kind of practice with these things so you're not figuring them out in the moment. And luckily we have such great access to everything like online, but that doesn't mean it's always the best information. But again, she mentions like checking the expiration date and like putting condoms on properly. #1 reason why they tend to fail is they're not put on correctly. So knowing yourself, kind of considering all these things, and then remembering in the back of your mind that even if you do everything properly, sometimes these things fail, right? And there isn't anything that's like 100% effective, except for maybe abstinence, which even in some cases then can lead to things like STIs, even without any kind of sexual contact. So what I want to do from here, I have a bunch of items, and I want to stress that these are like demonstration items. They are like very expired. So don't be like, plan B, yes, right now it's expired like, I don't even know when, very, very long time ago. And I think somebody took one anyway. Yep, right. So it scares me. I always worry that somebody took it. It probably did nothing, but it worries me anyway. What I want you to do is I want you to get into groups of 4, right? So find 4 people in total, get into a group, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do from there. But try and find 4. If it has to be 3 or 5, that's fine. But ideally 4 is like the best number. Find a group, kind of turn your desks toward each other. Everybody have one? All right. So what I want you to do for you, I have a sheet that I want you to grab. So in a moment, and ignore that it says, or no, I'm still in a moment, I'm going to have you come up. I'm going to have one of you grab the sheet. On this sheet, you're going to put all of your names. You're going to turn this into me for credit. And then you're going to pick one item, and it's going to be, we can do this like Hunger Games style, like whoever takes it, like it's gone when it's gone, right? Oh, then you're coming. No, I was ready. Thought she was going to attack me. So the items that I have up here, I have a male condom, right, and a female condom, right? So 2 different items. There's a NuvaRing, a patch, a dental dam, Plan B, a diaphragm, foam, an IUD. It's not this whole thing, it's just the tiny little thing at the top, but IUD, and birth control pills. Okay, so as a group, you can decide what you want. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you about like 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes as a group. And I want you to research your item together. So you can use your phones, you can use your computers or laptops, whatever you have available. You don't need to turn in the information. You're going to be sharing with the class. So you don't have to come up here, just from your seat, and it can be one person, or you can divide it up however you want. But I want you to give me a quick overview. What is your item? How do you use it? What are like the benefits and dangers, or maybe the positives and negatives of your item? If you find the failure rate, that'd be something interesting to share. And then like, how much does it cost? Where do you get it? How do you get it? Anything else interesting that you find out? So you're welcome to write that on the back or just on like scratch paper or whatever. What you're turning into me is just this form, and then you're going to present that just for like 2 minutes to the class from your seats. So you can decide as a group who wants to share, or you can break it up, whatever's the most comfortable for you. But as soon as you're ready, send one person up to grab a sheet and an item, and then go ahead and get started with your research. There you go. I'm very cool. Spermicide or no, attached and
At least you know.
So as a group start researching, make sure you put your first and last names on that page too at some point. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I thought that we were going like though. Yeah, but oh, you just said you're like you literally just you're good out. Be honest. Yeah. Oh, I know they put me like honestly, it's like literally the most random stuff for I have barely any. And my dad was my chance that the least I could last like yes. One that is I don't know. So I always the same way, like I think you're really every day, but all the same much so is writing. And then dad, he's such a good